In the 14th year of an ancient rebellion, an alliance of 4 eastern kings marched their armies into a place called Ashtaroth-Karnaim and began to slaughter giants. You have heard the story of the 4 kings against 5. You know they marched on the cities of the plain, tore through Sodom, and took Abram's nephew Lot. But look at the path they took to get there. Look at who they killed first. Before they ever reached the Valley of the Dead Sea, this unstoppable Eastern coalition executed a systematic, surgical extermination of the post-flood giant tribes. The mystery of Genesis 14 is not just that Abram defeated 4 kings. It is how a wandering nomad with a handful of shepherds shattered an army of giant killers. Picture it. Read the itinerary of destruction in Genesis 14-5. And in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer, and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaims in Ashtaroth-Karnaim, and the Zuzims in Ham, and the Emims in Shaveh-Kiriathaim. Stop right there. The Rephaim, the Zuzim, the Emim. If you read straight past those names, you miss the terror of the march. Turn the English back into the ancient Hebrew context and cross-reference those names with Deuteronomy chapter 2. Moses tells us exactly who the Emim were, a people great and many and tall as the Anakims, which also were accounted giants. See the scene. 4 superpower kings, Chedorlaomer of Elam, Amraphel of Shinar, Arioch of Eliezer, and Tidal, king of nations. They sweep south along the king's highway. They do not march directly to Sodom to suppress the tax rebellion of the 5 lesser kings. They detour. They strike Ashtaroth-Karnaim, a city of twin peaks, obliterating the Rephaim. They crush the Zuzim. They wipe out the Emim in the plains. Same desert, same slaughter. Targum Pseudo-Jonathan, an ancient Aramaic translation and commentary, preserves the dark weight of this campaign. The Eastern Coalition did not just conquer territory for tribute. They were hunting ancient, corrupted bloodlines. We are taught that Genesis 14 is a simple geopolitical border dispute over stolen wealth. It is not. It is a targeted annihilation of the remnants of the Nephilim tribes, a brutal eradication of the towering anomalies that still walked the post-flood world. Read it, not inventing. By the time Chedorlaomer's coalition finally reaches the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah in the Vale of Siddim, they are already drenched in the blood of giants. The armies of the plain never stood a chance. The battle is a massacre. The kings of Sodom and Gomorrah flee, falling into the slime pits of the valley. The cities are stripped bare of all their goods and all their provisions, and in the chaos of the ruin, a man named Lot is taken captive. The trap is sprung. The eastern kings turn north with their plunder, dragging the nephew of Abram with them. They are convinced they are the apex predators of the ancient Near East, an unstoppable force that has just purged the earth of monsters. They have killed the giants, and no one is left to stop them. But the desert has eyes, and one man crawling out of the carnage is about to bring a terrifying message to the oaks of Mamre. Who was the fugitive that survived the slaughter? And why did he run straight to Abram's camp? The dust on the southern horizon over the plains of Hebron breaks the midday heat. A solitary figure staggers into the shade of the ancient oaks of Mamre, breathless, covered in the white ash and dried blood of the ruined Siddim Valley. Genesis 14:13 records the arrival, and there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner. And these were confederate with Abram. Stop right there. The King James calls this messenger one that had escaped. Turn the English back into the Hebrew. The text does not say a fugitive. It uses a specific, definite article, hapalet, the escaped one. Read that again. Watch what the text does. It introduces this solitary survivor at the exact moment it calls the patriarch Abram the Hebrew. For the very first time in Scripture, the Hebrew word is Ivri, the one who crossed over. He is marked as distinct, separated by a divine covenant, dwelling in peace while the kings of the earth tear each other apart. We naturally assume this unnamed messenger is a loyal servant of Lot. We picture a wounded herdsman who slipped away from the baggage train, running through the night to bring desperate word to the wealthy uncle. But the ancient Jewish writers preserved a much darker memory of exactly who walked into Abram's camp that day. The Targum identifies Harpalit not as a human shepherd, but as a remnant of the towering anomalies. They name him as Og, a giant who had narrowly survived the four kings' extermination campaign at Ashtaroth-Karnaim. I hold this as their telling, not as proven fact. Test it the way the Bereans tested everything, but sit with that. If the ancient rabbis are right, this messenger did not come to Mamre out of loyalty. He came out of pure malice. The giant had just watched the Eastern Coalition butcher his own kind. He knew the absolute, terrifying strength of Chedorlaomer's army. The Targum records that the survivor brought the news of Lot's capture with a singular, calculated motive. He believed Abram would rush blindly out to rescue his bloodline and be slaughtered by the same unstoppable war machine. With Abram dead, the fugitive intended to take Sarah for himself. Picture it. The survivor of a monstrous race standing under the oaks, delivering the fatal news, waiting for the Hebrew nomad to panic. The news is spoken. The trap is set. The greatest military force on earth is marching north with the nephew in chains, leaving a trail of ruined cities and dead kings behind them. But the fugitive miscalculated, because Abram does not weep. He does not wring his hands in the dust of Hebron. He listens to the news of the four superpower kings, the slaughter of the giants, and the capture of his family. And he does something the ancient world never expected. He does not ask for terms of surrender. He prepares for war. The bait is laid under the oaks of Mamre by a survivor, hoping to see Abram fall to the giant killers. But Abram does not react with the frantic desperation of an uncle. He reacts with the cold precision of an apex predator. What exactly did Abram do in the fleeting hours before the sun went down on his camp? Inside the tent at Mamre, the dust settles, and the inventory of the stolen is spoken aloud. The fugitive finishes his terrifying report, detailing the fall of the 5 kings and the ruin of the valley. Genesis 14:11 and 12 record the aftermath. And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their victuals, and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. Stop right there. Watch what the text does. 2 separate verses, 2 separate takings. Verse 11 details the plunder. Of the cities, the gold, the grain, the wealth of the plain. But verse 12 isolates the true casualty. The Eastern Coalition did not just sweep up a random herdsman in the chaos of a sacked city. Think about the terrifying stakes of this moment. In Genesis 12, God promised to make Abram a great nation, but right now, under the oaks of Mamre, Abram is childless. Lot is the only family he has in the land of Canaan. Lot is the presumptive heir. If the kings of Elam and Shinar carry Lot away into the east, they do not just take a captive. They erase the future of the Hebrew bloodline. Sodom was the excuse. Lot was the prize. Sit with that. The Dead Sea Scrolls, sealed in jars in the caves of Qumran 2,000 years ago, preserve a fragile, battered parchment called the Genesis Apocryphon. This text gives us a visceral, first-person window into the moments after the fugitive stopped speaking. It records that Abram wept. He did not sit in stoic silence. He wept for his brother's son, mourning the captive who was being dragged toward Babylon. I offer it as that, one tradition's record, but the Apocryphon reveals that the weeping was brief. The grief crystallized instantly into a cold, terrifying resolve. Abram realized the Eastern kings, burdened with the massive spoils of 5 ruined cities and countless prisoners, were moving slowly up the king's highway. They were heavily armed, battle-hardened from slaughtering the giant tribes of the Rephaim and Emim, but they were weighed down. Abram had a window. Picture the shift in the camp. Abram does not send an envoy to negotiate a ransom. He does not beg the Amorite chieftains Mamre, Eshcol, and Aner to lend him thousands of their warriors to form a massive counter-coalition. A massive army would kick up dust, make noise, and signal the kings of the east that pursuit was coming. Abram needs speed. He needs silence. He needs men who will not break when they see the giant killers in the dark. Same desert, same blood. The fugitive stands under the oaks, waiting for the Hebrew nomad to break and fall into the trap. Instead, he watches Abram turn his back and walk into his own camp to summon a force that defies all military logic. He bypasses the hired mercenaries. He bypasses the tribal levies. He calls out a single, precise fraction of his household. The pursuit is about to begin. But the men Abram draws from his tents are not ordinary shepherds. Who exactly were these men? And what ancient Hebrew word proves they were trained for something far darker than herding sheep? The shadows lengthen over the oaks of Mamre as Abram moves through his own camp, bypassing the outer tents of the herdsmen, and walking directly into the center ring. He is not calling a general muster. He is not handing spears to shepherds and hoping for blind courage. Listen to the exact phrase in Genesis 14:14. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. Stop right there. Look closely at the phrase, trained servants. We read that and picture a makeshift militia of farmers who know how to swing a club to protect the flocks from wolves, but translate the English back into the ancient Hebrew. The word is chanik. It appears nowhere else in the entire Hebrew Bible. It does not simply mean a soldier. It means the initiated. Read that again. The word chanik shares the exact same root as the name Enoch, the ancient patriarch who walked with God and was taken. It is the root word for Hanukkah, which means dedication. Abram is not gathering a peasant levy. He is calling out a localized, separated order of men who have been initiated into the covenant of his God. They are trained not just in the blade, but in the terrifying, unyielding spiritual authority of El Elyon, the Most High. See the scene. The giant who brought the news expected Abram to ride out with a chaotic, terrified mob. Instead, he watches a silent, disciplined cadre step out from the tents in the twilight. 318 men, the extra-biblical book of Jasher, an ancient Hebrew history, preserves the weight of what was happening inside Abram's house long before this night. Jasher records that Abram did not merely teach his household how to survive the harshness of Canaan. He rigorously instructed them in the laws of the Creator, separating them entirely from the idolatry and spiritual corruption of the surrounding nations. I offer it as that one tradition's record, but sit with that. These 318 men are the chanikim. They are immune to the spiritual terror of the giant killers because they have been dedicated to a higher authority. The armies of the Eastern kings rely on the sheer, crushing mass of chariots and spears, fresh off the slaughter of the Rephaim. They are a blunt instrument, but Abram is hunting them with a scalpel. He arms the initiated. They leave the camp in the fading light, slipping into the hills, moving rapidly north toward the city of Dan. Same desert, same enemy, They are a microscopic fraction of the forces Chedorlium commands. In the physical realm, this pursuit is tactical suicide, but there is a hidden architecture beneath the text, a numeric mystery buried in the exact count of the men Abram took with him into the dark. 318 initiated men are marching north to face the greatest army in the ancient world. But the ancient scribes knew that this specific number was not just a head count, it was a profound cipher, pointing to the only man in Abram's camp who actually mattered. If Abram armed exactly 318 men, why does the oldest Jewish arithmetic insist he only took one? Under the cold starlight of the Judean hill country, a line of armed men moves silently north. They are not marching to the beat of a war drum. They are tracking the deep, heavy rut, left by an eastern army burdened with the spoils of 5 ruined cities. Genesis 14 anchors the exact size of this pursuit, and when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. Stop right there. In the ancient world, military scribes rounded numbers. They wrote of thousands, of tens of thousands, of multitudes like the sand of the sea. But Moses pauses the narrative of Genesis to give you a hyper-specific count. 318. Not a general estimate, not a rounded battalion. Exactly 318. Read that again. When you look at the text in English, 318 is just a staggering tactical disadvantage. But turn the English back into the ancient Hebrew, where every letter of the alphabet also carries a strict numerical value, a practice known as gematria. The ancient Jewish sages, preserving this linguistic cipher in the rabbinic commentaries, noticed a haunting mathematical exactness hidden inside this verse. They looked at the name of Abram's most trusted servant, the man who managed his entire household. You find him named just one chapter later in Genesis 15:2, Eliezer of Damascus. Watch what the text does. If you take the Hebrew letters that spell Eliezer Aleph, Lamed, Yod, Ayin, Zayin, Resh, and add their numeric values together, the cipher locks into place. The Aleph is 1, the Lamed is 30, the Yod is 10, the Ayin is 70, the Zayin is 7, the Resh is 200. Add them up. The sum of Eliezer's name is exactly 318. Sit with that. The ancient rabbis taught that Abram did not take a battalion into the northern dark. They claim this verse is a cryptographic riddle, revealing that Abram took only one initiated man, Eliezer, armed with the sheer terrifying authority of the covenant, and that divine power amplified him to the strength of 318 warriors. I hold this as their telling, not as proven fact. Test it the way the Bereans tested everything. But whether Abram marched with 318 chanikim or with a single, highly initiated steward carrying the weight of that number, the physical reality on the ground remains identical. A microscopic force is hunting a massive, blood-soaked war machine. They are moving relentlessly toward the extreme northern border of Canaan, tracking the giant killers to the ancient city of Dan. Picture it. The eastern kings are completely unaware. They have camped in the northern mountains, confident in their absolute supremacy. They have slaughtered the Rephaim. They hold Lot. They hold the wealth of the plain. They have set no rear guard, because they believe there is nothing left in the land capable of following them. But Abram is not fighting a conventional war. He is not preparing to line up his initiated men in a pitched battle at dawn. He is waiting for the sun to drop. As the campfires of the 4 kings ignite across the valley of Dan, Abram prepares a devastating tactical reversal. How does a single nomad with a tiny, initiated force break an invincible coalition in the pitch black of the northern mountains? The headwaters of the Jordan River run cold under the crushing shadow of Mount Hermon. The Eastern Coalition has halted their march at the extreme northern boundary of Dan, lighting thousands of campfires across the valley floor. They are gorging on the plunder of Sodom, resting in the absolute confidence of their own brutality. They have set no rear guard. They have just exterminated the Nephilim tribes from the face of the earth. They believe they are the untouchable lords of the ancient Near East. But the dark is not empty. Read exactly how the strike happens in Genesis 14:15. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them, and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. Stop right there. Watch what the text does. The King James says Abram divided himself. Turn the English back into the Hebrew. The word is chalak. It does not mean a simple military flanking maneuver. It means to apportion, to assign a specific and binding lot. Abram takes his 318 initiated men and splinters them into precise, calculated fractions. He surrounds the sprawling, sleeping mass of the four armies. He does not bring a war trumpet. He brings a localized apocalypse. Picture the scene. Abram waits for the dead of night, the hour of deepest human vulnerability. And then, from every side of the valley at once, the chanikim strike. They do not fight a battle of attrition. They weaponize the darkness itself, creating the illusion of a massive, overwhelming force. The sudden, coordinated violence shatters the camp. I hold this as one reading, a tactical reconstruction drawn straight from the Hebrew verbs. But sit with that. The psychological shock is absolute. The Eastern kings wake to pure chaos. They assumed that because they had defeated the towering anomalies, the Rephaim, the Zuzim, the Emim, they had nothing left to fear. They were wrong. They are not fighting giants anymore. They are fighting the physical manifestation of the covenant. They are fighting a force that moves with divine precision in the pitch black. Reading, not inventing. The invincible coalition breaks. Tens of thousands of battle-hardened soldiers, men who did not flinch, when facing monsters at Ashtaroth Karnaim, panic and flee into the northern mountains. They abandon their tents. They drop their weapons. They leave the heavy, glittering wealth of Sodom scattered in the dirt of Dan. Same night, same terror. But Abram does not stop. He does not pause to gather the gold of the five kings. He is not a mercenary fighting for tribute. He is hunting his bloodline. The text says he smote them and pursued them. He drives the shattered remnants of the four armies relentlessly northward, pushing them completely out of the promised land and into the desolate Syrian wilderness. The midnight strike at Dan was only the breaking point. The kings of the east are running for their lives, bleeding out across the hills toward Damascus, and Abram is right behind them. He will not let them breathe until he has recovered every single thing they stole. How far into enemy territory is the patriarch willing to go? And what exactly does he rip from the hands of the fleeing kings? The Syrian wilderness north of Damascus bleeds into the horizon. The remnants of four superpower armies are no longer marching. They are running. They are broken, terrified, scattering into the ravines to escape the nightmare that erupted from the dark at Dan. But Abram does not let them vanish. Read the exact boundary of the chase in the second half of Genesis 14:15. And pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. Stop right there. The King James says the left hand. Turn the English back into the ancient Hebrew orientation. To the ancient Hebrew mind, you face east to map the world. Forward is east. The right hand is south. The left hand is north. Small. Abram pushes them into the extreme north, deep into the rocky, unforgiving terrain of Syria. And look at the name of the place where the chase finally ends. Hobah. In Hebrew, the root of Hobah means a hiding place. See the scene. The giant killers who proudly marched down the king's highway, who wiped out the Rephaim without breaking a sweat, are now cowering in the caves of Hobah. They are begging the rocks to hide them from a nomad and his 318 initiated men. The reversal is absolute. The apex predators of the ancient Near East have become the hunted. And in that hiding place, Abram takes back what is his. Read the final accounting in Genesis 14:16. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot, and his goods, and the women also, and the people. Read that again. All the goods, the women, the people. But at the center of the verse is the true prize, the entire reason the chanikim drew their blades in the first place. Lot. The bloodline is secured. The covenant will not end in a Babylonian slave camp. The book of Jasher adds a staggering detail to this moment of extraction. It records that in this entire pursuit, from the chaos of the midnight strike at Dan to the final cornering in the caves of Hobah, not a single one of Abram's men fell. They shattered an army of thousands, and the 318 walked out of the Syrian wilderness completely intact. Not one man lost. I hold this as their telling, not as proven fact. Test it the way the Bereans tested everything. But sit with the reality of the canonical text. Abram strips the 4 kings of every single thing they took from Sodom. He cuts his nephew loose. He gathers the women, he rallies the captives, and he turns the entire massive caravan around. The 318 initiated men, who left Mamre with nothing but their weapons, become guards over the staggering wealth the eastern kings had slaughtered giants to possess. They begin the long march south, back into the land of Canaan, driving the spoils of war before them. The bloodline is rescued, but the desert is about to demand a reckoning for the violence. A meeting has been set in a deep ravine outside Salem, where 2 kings are waiting to see what kind of man just walked out of the north. When the victorious warlord finally rides into the king's valley, who steps out of the shadows with bread, wine, and a terrifying divine blessing, the dust of the king's valley rises as a massive, glittering caravan slowly descends toward the river. Abram is coming home. Genesis 14:17 places the final meeting in the shadows of the ravine, and the king of Sodom went out to meet him. After his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer and of the kings that were with him at the valley of Sheveh, which is the king's dale. Stop right there. The king of Sodom, crawling out of the humiliation of the slime pits, comes to negotiate for his surviving people. But before he can speak, the text introduces a sudden, profound disruption. Genesis 14:18 breaks the narrative. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. Read that again. Melchizedek does not bring a sword. He brings a communion. He looks at the exhausted, bloodied chanikim. He looks at the staggering wealth of 5 ruined cities, and he speaks the absolute truth of what actually happened in the northern mountains. Blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand. It was not just a military flanking maneuver. The covenant fought for them. Abram responds by handing this mysterious priest a 10th of all the spoils. He gives the king of Sodom back his people, but refuses to take a single thread or shoe latchet from the cursed king's wealth, refusing to let the corrupted plain claim they made the Hebrew rich. I hold this as one reading, not the final word. But look at the staggering shift in the spiritual landscape. Go back now to the ash and blood where this film began. The ruins of Ashtaroth Karnaim. The massive coalition of 4 eastern kings wiping the Rephaim and the Emim from the face of the earth. The towering fugitive running to the oaks of Mamre, baiting the trap, expecting the Hebrew nomad to be swallowed alive by the war machine. You have read this chapter 100 times as a simple rescue mission. But tonight, you see the terrifying hierarchy of the ancient world. The giants were monstrous, but they fell to the kings of the East. The kings of the East were invincible, but they fell to exactly 318 initiated men. Abram was never just a peaceful shepherd surviving the famine. He was a warlord who guarded the promised bloodline with a violent, unyielding dedication. He held the covenant, and heaven itself moved to protect it when he walked into the dark. We know the cipher of the 318, but exactly who Melchizedek was, and what the Eastern kings actually saw hunting them in the Syrian wilderness. The desert is still holding the rest. If you made it to the end of this journey, comment the word "watched" below. Subscribe because we are uncovering the hidden architecture of the ancient text every week, and send this video to one person who loves biblical history, but has never heard the truth about the 318. The text is not hiding from us. It is waiting for us to read it.